Yes, it's a new setup, deal with it. I'm sorry for such a long absence, but I've got to say, after doing a couple of political videos recently, it's nice to get back to something more mainstream.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
Oh, for the love of... Right, I guess I'm going to have to deal with that now. Even though the campaign is almost over, I'll almost certainly be doing this too late because I was busy and I had stuff to do. And anyway, who cares what I think? Everyone cares what Brenda from Bristol thinks.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this.
And I think whether we agree with her or not, we can all understand her point of view. We're busy people. The 3 seconds it takes to locate the correct box and put an X in it is time we don't have. And why is Theresa May calling this now? Because she thinks she can win in a landslide. Because the British people are too apathetic to work out who they should be voting for, so they'll just vote for her because we're all... past Alistair, what is the phrase? We're all referendumed out. At least that's what she thinks. But then she also thinks that the Tories have strong support in Scotland, and she actually started her campaign up near my neck of the woods. Shall we have a look at how that turned out?
Next one.
Good, absolutely.
Well, you've got to get your leaflets together.
I told you we'd make you work, Prime Minister, when you gave me your support.
Scared off by the... yes, thank you very much. Great, well,
Thank
good
you.
luck and yeah,
So thank you so much for coming.
No, it's a pleasure.
We'll see you back in the campaign trail.
See you back
here.
on. Yes, indeed. Will do.
Good luck with oil and gas.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you. Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.
I've never done political canvassing before, but I don't think that's how you do it. I'd always assumed that it would take up a great deal of my time. I didn't realise that you could just go to 6 houses in a commuter town in the middle of the day when it's a decent bet that nobody will be there and bugger off again. Now, I'm not saying that the Tories deliberately targeted houses that they thought were empty so that the cameras wouldn't get to see Scottish voters saying exactly what they thought of the Prime Minister. I'm not saying that, although I might be heavily implying it. All I'm saying is, let's just take what we saw there, make a mental note of it, and look what happened elsewhere that day.
Shane! Speak the people! Speak the people! Shane! Speak the people! Shane! Shane!
Go on, we're just doing the
Smile!
This was controversial for a couple of reasons. First of all, there was no live Wi-Fi phone signal, which meant it was not possible to cover the event live. Why? Because they were holding it in the middle of nowhere. Crathis Village Hall, to be exact. You type Crathis into Google and it will auto-suggest castle, because I didn't know they had a village hall. I didn't know they had a village. Anyway, they booked it under the disguise of a children's party, as you do, and they didn't invite any of the local press to attend. The press that did attend were only allowed to ask questions if they had been submitted for approval in advance by the campaign. Now, that looks dodgy to me. That looks a bit weak and wobbly to me. But I brought this up with a conservative-leaning person, and they suggested that, oh well, that's actually standard practice these days. Fair enough. So I looked into it, and I can't find any evidence that Jeremy Corbyn has ever done that. I can't find any evidence that Paul Nuttall has ever done that. I can't find any evidence that Nicola Sturgeon or Leanne Wood or Caroline Lucas has ever done it. I can't find any evidence that Tim Farron has ever done it, although I can find evidence of him criticising the Prime Minister for doing it. Seriously, look at all the political leaders. I could do this all day, but maybe that would be bias of me. Surely we can find some politician that would act the same way.
No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Now, I don't want to draw lazy comparisons between these two because they're clearly very different people. One is an alt-right, flip-flopping, propagandising, compulsive lying, anti-democratic demagogue with silly hair who knows nothing about leadership of a country, and the other one is President of the United States. But it is sort of relevant, because in political terms, we Brits have spent 2017 with our feet up, looking across the pond and laughing, because we're like, ha ha ha, look at those idiots. They've got a Conservative leader who people just believe, even when they're obviously lying and only going on shows that don't challenge them that much. So people just buy into the lies, even when they say the same crap over and over again. Good thing that could never happen here, eh? And that's the thing. Theresa May has subtlety on her side. You turn her hair orange and tweak her delivery slightly, not what she's saying, just the way she says it. If she was going, I know Brexit, I'm the best at Brexit, nobody does Brexit better than me, we'd see through that immediately. But because she's got a little bit of subtlety in her delivery, we're prepared to buy it.
Let us put forward our plans for Brexit and our alternative programmes for government.
Yes, while we're on the subject, you see, this election is about the one issue. This is not your common or garden general election. This is a snap election. It's on the one issue, Brexit. Don't bother voting for the party that you think would be best at running the country overall. This is all about Brexit. And the Conservatives are the only ones with a plan for Brexit, you see? But they can't tell us anything about this super secret, super clever plan, because that would weaken their negotiating position. And you know what? I would actually give them a pass on that. If they don't want to weaken their negotiating position, I can accept that excuse. However, you don't get to take credit for being the only ones with a Brexit plan if you have come up with that plan 1 year late. Where was this Brexit plan this time last year? Oh yeah, that's right. Nobody, Remain or Leave, had bothered to come up with a plan for what we do if Britain votes for Brexit. Well, except for one person. But don't worry, because I have a plan. I can fix this. Unfortunately, that video was about a quarter of an hour long by that point, so I just wrapped up with a joke about why I couldn't tell you, and 1 year later, I still haven't told you what the actual plan was, have I? So I guess you can wait a bit longer then, because I need to get on with it. The point I'm trying to make is, if we had 2 words to sum up Theresa May, what words would we use? I'm just curious, because at the start of this campaign, anyone that vowed to do a drinking game where they took a shot every time she said the word strong or stable would need a liver transplant by now. And if you want somebody that is strong and stable, the last person you should be voting for is Theresa May. As we've already seen, she actively avoids engagement with the voters, because remember that clip I showed you from earlier? Let's look at what she did when she actually had a chance to speak to the voters.
No? OK, come on, trouble you then.
We're talking about someone whose nickname is Submarine. Why? Because she surfaces to make carefully prepared political statements, but when things get tough, she disappears. That's why she won't take part in the leadership debates, because she can't think on her feet. I prefer taking questions from the public in a controlled environment when there is no opportunity for your political opponent to pick apart what you're saying. Because, you see, I watched the leadership debates. You know, I do this crap so that you don't have to. And all the topics of debate, all the original questions, were from members of the public. So her excuse is bogus. So I suppose while I'm here, I better go into the debates and pick apart the nuances and who won and why and all the important political points that were covered. Oh, sod that. I'll just show you a highlights compilation.
7 party leaders were invited to the ITV Leaders Debate. Tonight, 5 turned up. The leader of the Welsh party, Plaid Cymru, spoke directly to the Prime Minister.
You may be too scared to come here tonight, for your U-turns to be highlighted, for your cruel policies to be exposed. You want this election to only be about Brexit, because that means you avoid talking about the real issues.
Why are we running the risk of a hard, extreme Brexit? It is around control of immigration, and Theresa May not have had the guts to be here tonight, but her spokesperson in the form of Paul Nuttall certainly appears to be here.
And called her Natalie by mistake.
And that's 6,500 well-paid jobs in Wales that you were prepared to just lose down the Swanee.
Natalie, we have a huge trading deficit with the European Union.
What would you do to support teachers and schools to ensure that every child gets the best start in life?
It was a chance to attack the government's policies.
I believe in a public education system. In Wales, we're not going to have grammar schools, and as long as I draw breath, that will be the case.
I was quite aghast this morning when I heard Theresa May say that she was going to increase funding for schools, almost literally by taking the food out of children's mouths.
Yeah. Free school meals for infant school children was something the Liberal Democrats delivered in government. To get rid of them, after the schools have put so much money and effort to build kitchens, to bring in new ways of delivering those free school meals, is an absolute hideous assault.
If you put that corporation tax up, you're then in a position to deal with the crisis in social care, the crisis in our NHS, properly fund our schools and not ask head teachers to collect from the parents to pay the teachers. And I would just say this, since Amber Rudd seems so confident that this is a country at ease with itself, have you been to a food bank? Have you seen people sleeping around our stations? Have you seen the level...
Jeremy, I need
have
to
you
answer
seen
that.
the
I'd
levels
like to
of
answer
poverty
your
that
attack.
exist
I'd like to answer
because
your
of
attack.
your government's
Of course,
conscious
I have
decisions
been
on
to
benefits?
food banks.
Jeremy, if
And
you
the
want...
way to
Jeremy,
have
if
people
you...
out of food banks, the way to have people not using food
There's
banks...
two of you coming at me
to
now.
make
I'm not sure which I'm going to
sure
take.
that they can have good jobs.
And in your manifesto, there was a notable absence of costings.
Well, I would say, in answer to that question, judge us on our record. On our record, we have cut...
I think the first rule of leadership is to show up. You don't call a general election. You don't call a general election and say it's the most important election in her lifetime, and then not even be bothered to come and debate the issues at stake.
Well, look, you've heard my arguments. I'll give you the final say over the Brexit deal. I will put a penny on income tax for the NHS, and I will stand up to the Conservatives over the dementia tax and everything else. Now, Amber Rudd is up next. She is not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is not here tonight. She can't be bothered. So why should you? In fact, Bake Off is on BBC Two next. Why not make yourself a brew? You are not worth Theresa May's time. Don't give her yours.
So, in my humble opinion, how did everyone do? Well, the SNP were good, but anonymous. They didn't really get involved in the debates, either because they weren't given the opportunity or because they didn't have to, because the leaders agreed with them anyway, for the most part. Paul Nuttall lost both debates, but in fairness, he was outnumbered both times. The Conservatives skipped one debate and sent Amber Rudd along to the other. Now, her performance was okay, actually, but not going to win any favours with me because I know it was full of lies. Conversely, Jeremy Corbyn, I thought, did well, but I'm not going to declare him the winner because he settled for landing one punch on Amber Rudd when he could and should have knocked her clean out. Tim Farron's performance throughout both debates was really good, but that bake-off comment was the only thing I heard from him in the second debate that I hadn't already heard in the first, so I'm not going to declare him the winner. There's an argument that Leanne Wood won it because she went down the easy route of attacking UKIP all the time, but the one who communicated well throughout and the opponents never laid a glove on was Caroline Lucas. So I would say that she was the winner, although I don't think that actually counts for anything. And I'm actually in favour of borrowing this American idea of having televised leaders' debates. I'm not so much in favour of the American right-wing idea of losing the debate and then blaming the audience. But that's not just new from the Daily Mail. Nigel Farage was at it 2 years ago.
There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing.
Hang on a second.
Hang
on a second.
When you talk
Nigel,
about
let
housing,
me just say one thing.
Yes.
This is an audience that has been carefully chosen, not
Very
by the
carefully.
BBC, not by the BBC, but
Yes.
by an independent polling organisation to represent the balance between all parties. It's
never a great idea.
Very good.
Very good.
Very good. Well, no,
Anyway, carry on.
I think it's very interesting.
It's never a great idea
You
to attack
cannot
the audience,
discuss.
Nigel, in
You
my
cannot discuss.
in my
No, the
opinion.
real audience are sitting at home, actually.
Now, far be it from me to defend the BBC from accusations of bias, but for these debates they do get an independent organisation to carefully select the audience so it is representative across the board. Now, the only issue with that is how they do it, because most of the major parties are either left-wing, liberal, or claiming to be left-wing. So if you do it on a breakdown of equal support for the parties, then yes, the audience will be rather left-leaning. However, if you split it so it's 50% left-wing, 50% right-wing, then some of the parties are going to be underrepresented. Basically, what I'm saying is, I wouldn't want that job. And the BBC are getting accused of bias from the left-wing as well, and I would sort of sum it up as, if both sides are accusing you of bias, you're probably getting something right. Why are the left wing accusing them of bias? Because they won't play this song on their radio.
She's a liar, liar. Oh, she's a liar, liar. No, you can't trust her. No, 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 no.
Now, for those of you thinking that's enough character assassination, can you talk about some policies now? Sure, I can do that. I don't think the Conservatives are going to come out of it any better, though. So, we've all read the manifestos, right? What do you mean, no? What do you mean you have a life? Okay, so, the Labour manifesto, probably the best one they have done, ever. So, naturally, the Conservatives are dismissing it as a suicide note. What's it all about? Well, for a start, they want to reverse the Conservative privatisation of the NHS. Good idea. They also want to scrap tuition fees. Not lower them to what they were, scrap them altogether. Now, that might sound impossible to some parts of the UK, but I live in Scotland and we've had that for ages, so don't tell me that it can't be done. If you want to make a direct comparison between Conservative and Labour manifestos, look at homelessness. The Conservative manifesto says they will lower homelessness. Sounds good, right? The Labour manifesto says they will end homelessness. They actually have a plan to do it. Another thing I notice looking at both manifestos is that the Labour manifesto is larger print, easier on the eye, as if they actually want you to read it. The Conservative manifesto is small print, unappealing, almost as if they're trying to hide something. For example, the fact that they want to murder foxes. Where does it say that, you ask? Page 26. And I had to know to look for it. They say that they will review the Hunting Act with a vote in Parliament. That translates as scrapping it. Bear in mind, this is a manifesto. This is what they are saying they will do if they get a majority government, when they can control the outcome of that vote. And have you heard of this dementia tax? That might sound like left-wing propaganda, but I did read the manifesto and look for it, and good job I did, because if I didn't know it was there, I wouldn't have found it. Because it's not under the health section, as you might expect. It's under the elderly section, and written in a very long passage. In such small writing, it's almost impossible for old people to read. Here it is. Basically, if you have made it to old age and have built up some savings over that time, you better not contract dementia, because the government will not pay for you. That NHS that you have spent your entire life contributing to will not cover you until your assets drop to £100,000. So you've got no inheritance. And this is somewhere where I actually have some sympathy with millionaires. I don't have sympathy when Labour says they're going to tax them to high heaven, and it's only the top 5% of people who will see their taxes go up under Labour. But I do have sympathy with them if they spend their entire life building up a fortune, and then seeing that going straight back to the government when the government should be funding their care. Now, full disclosure, there is some ambiguity about whether this will actually go ahead, because this got widespread criticism, and then the Conservatives said they were dropping it, and then Theresa May said they weren't dropping it, and who really knows? At some point though, it doesn't really matter. You're still the ones that thought about doing it. If I went into my neighbour's garden and was about to take a dump, and then my neighbour caught me, and I said, well, actually, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to do it, I don't think that would really get me off the hook. And just in case my neighbour is watching, it was the cat. It wasn't me. And I was going to try and wrap this whole thing up with a letter I received from Ruth Davidson, but that actually opens up quite a lot more things I want to talk about, so I'm going to do that in a separate video where I talk about Scotland's choice, which means I don't really have an ending.